one of the things, Dr. Jeff, that I've noticed, right, is that a lot of people, they spent the majority of their lives in the fiat matrix, have a hard time, in my experience, transitioning to a Bitcoin standard, right? Very, very difficult. I would say can't do it less than 9 months, right? You got to go through like all these aha moments and just like, oh my god, and realizations and et cetera, et cetera. And specifically in the West, really, in the developed world, where people have this financial privilege of living in a country that has a relatively stable fiat currency, right? You pitch Bitcoin to someone in the global South, and they're like, "Well, where do I sign up? That sounds great. That sounds beautiful." And I think that they're more prone to government's response, as much as they say this wasn't a response to Bitcoin. I really believe it was government's response to Bitcoin, which is the central bank digital currency. So my question to you is, does that matter that a percentage of the population is going to be basically socially attacked to adopt, this failing currency versus something like Bitcoin? And I'll tell you what, Dr. Ross, specifically, like, you know, I talk to no coiners, and they're completely asleep and oblivious to this. And I think it's like I'm a big believer in incentives because they're not incentivized to adopt something like Bitcoin. And you actually tweeted this out, and this is what I wanted to talk to you about, which was Bitcoin mass adoption won't occur until Bitcoin becomes much easier to use as a medium of exchange. And number two, using Bitcoin to buy goods and services does not cause a taxable event. So specifically on number one, I completely agree with you. Apple Pay is so easy, right? You click two buttons on the side of your phone. It's like ding, and it has a little haptic, and it makes you feel good, right? Bitcoin is a little bit. You can't deny. I'm not saying this isn't going to change, but at this moment in time, it is a lot. It's a lot less convenient to use in countries that have developed financial systems and stable fiat currencies. You can't deny that Bitcoin is less convenient.
Yeah, and what's funny about that tweet that you're bringing up, I think I tweeted that yesterday. I'm getting a ton of kickback from Bitcoiners that are like, "You're crazy. It's super easy to use. Layer 2 is easy. Lightning's awesome." And I'm like, "Well, it is, and it's coming, and it's developed." And by the way, I'm super hardcore pro fanatic Lightning. Like Lightning Layer 2 is awesome. It's going to change the world. It's going to be what's awesome about Bitcoin. It's going to make it a very easy to use medium of exchange. We're not there yet. The people who are developing layer 2 solutions, Jack Mallers, Jack Dorsey, all of these people who Lightning Labs, all of the people who are doing this stuff, they're like, hey, this is really hard to get this infrastructure built out so it's just as easy to use as credit cards, as Apple Pay, as PayPal. We know that if we want to make a payment, like if I want to pay you, Nico, and send you some sats right now, super easy, right? But my whole point is, to your point, it's not convenient. It's still not accepted around the world yet. I still can't walk into my grocery store and just go bling, I'm paying for my groceries. I can't walk into a restaurant and say bling, I'm paying for my food. They don't accept it yet. So that's all I'm saying about that. So that is, but what's cool about that is there are a ton of really smart people working on that right now, like Jack Mallers. I just listened to him today on Bitcoin Magazine. He's working on that right now, and they're working on it on the point of sale points, so that if we go to grocery stores and restaurants this year, we should be able to pay with Bitcoin on the Lightning Network. Should be easy. We're just not there yet. That's my only point with that. And then what most people left out is number two, is the fact that it causes a taxable event. One, that's ridiculous, right? Because the government here in the US at least treats Bitcoin as property. So anytime you sell it, you're creating a taxable event. That's frustrating. And two is, even though that's an issue, it wouldn't be as big of an issue if it weren't so dang hard to keep track of your cost basis, which you need to do your taxes, which is frustrating and annoying. And so if we have to work through those kind of things, and it's going to take several years to get to that point where it's as easy and seamless to pay with Bitcoin as it is to pay with Visa. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. I'm not, a lot of people are getting on my case about that, saying, oh, Bitcoin doesn't need that to increase in price. I agree with you, right? The main thing Bitcoin solves is the store of value problem, right? When you have a perfectly scarce, you guys, I literally talk about this all day, every day for the last 6 years. It's what I do. But I'm saying that if you want to get grandma and grandpa and Uncle Ned into Bitcoin, you have to make it as easy as Apple Pay for them. And we're nowhere near that point yet. And that's when you get the mass adoption and the worldwide adoption. I still think we're years away from that happening personally. And that's good. If you're a Bitcoiner now, right, and you're a very early adopter, you want to get in before the rest of the world figures it out. That's how you make these crazy gains while we're still in price discovery mode. That's my whole point with that tweet.
Interesting. And let's talk about part number 2, right? Which is, and I think that this is another big hurdle. Now, like it's extremely difficult for them to enforce this, but it doesn't mean it's still not against the law, which was technically how it is right now. And this is why I believe that legal tender laws are such BS in the first place, right? Let's talk about the fact that right now, how it stands, at least specifically in the United States and honestly in Europe as well, right? Where the transaction of Bitcoin is considered a taxable event, specifically if you've had a gain, right? What are your thoughts on that? Because you know what, and I think this is a more difficult problem to solve than number one, Dr. Ross, because they're going to have to admit on that problem that, hey, no, your money's designed to lose value. Versus if they allow that, it's like, no, money can lose value. And I think that if you open that box, you can't put it back in. It's a
Right.
very, very difficult question for them to answer.
Right. That's what makes it such a tricky issue too. It's the government basically admitting that Bitcoin is legitimate also, which is not something they totally, especially here in the US, right? We're the world's reserve currency. They want to maintain that status for as long as possible. And so I think that it's not going to come from the federal government anytime soon. I think it's going to be kind of a organic, ground up, basically a state-based movement. So I think states in the U.S. will start to push that. We're going to see countries like El Salvador and other things push it as well. Um, but that's kind of the issue is when do governments, playing with the game theory, when do they acknowledge that Bitcoin is a legitimate competitor to their currency, and when do they admit that their currency is designed to depreciate in value over time versus this Bitcoin thing, which is perfectly scarce and literally designed to appreciate in value over time? And how do you kind of balance that if you're a legislator? So it's going to take some time, and this is we're in the difficult phases, and I think that's why it gets so much pushback from the kings and queens of the current fiat system, the Jamie Dimons and the Warren Buffetts and Charlie Mungers and the Elizabeth Warrens and all these people who are very opposed to Bitcoin, and all the statists who hate Bitcoin because they think it undermines the dollar. You know what? They're right. It does undermine the dollar, and it's going to, at some point, somewhere probably far in the future, going to replace the dollar. But for now, the best thing that I think government officials can do and regulators could do is to find ways to play nice with Bitcoin, to figure out how to take advantage of it for their own sake, for their own selfish reasons. It's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. And so the best thing they can do is figure out solutions with it and not try to ignore it and pretend it doesn't exist.